Alright guys, listen up. Anyone up for a Jill sandwich? So for this video, you're gonna have to give this game a chance. Don't judge it just by looking at it, and don't let the PS1 graphics change the way you feel about it. Because no matter how bad this game has aged, this game is special. To do this, bring your mind back to 1996, the time where horror games were stupid. Because this game shaped the way that horror games are today. Ladies and gentlemen,
Resident Evil.
yes, Resident Evil, the first horror game I ever played. Before we get in, I have a little story to tell you. Back in the day when I was about, I don't know, 6 years old or something, I had the original Xbox, but my uncle had the PS1, and whenever I would go over and play it, I'd play games like Tekken 3, Crash 2, Duke Nukem Time to Kill, yeah, remember that, and the original Gran Turismo. Those were my go-to games back then, but the thing is, there were heaps of games that he had to choose from, so I decided to try these games out that I've never tried before, and see what they were like. Some of them were shit, but some turned out to be really cool, such as Siphon Filter and Metal Gear Solid. But then I came across Resident Evil. By looking at it, I thought it was some sort of shooting game. And back then I was like, ooh, gun games like Halo. I like Halo. And then I saw this. It was at this point where I thought the PS1 was haunted, so I turned it off and didn't touch it for weeks. You know what though? I wouldn't have asked for a better first impression of horror games. This traumatized me as a kid. I was so young and so curious that I eventually got back into the game and discovered it for what it really was. A good game, a good horror game, and an excellent survival horror game.
Captain Wesker, where's Chris?
Stop it! Don't open that door!
But Chris is...
I take that back, this game is shit 0 out of 10. So I want everyone to sit back, relax, and revisit the earliest survival horror strategy game known as Resident Evil.
Alpha Team is flying around the forest zone situated in northwest Raccoon City, where we're searching for the helicopter of our compatriots Bravo Team.
So it turns out, an elite task force known as STAR's Bravo Team goes missing in the Arklay Mountains in Raccoon City. They seem to be investigating bizarre murder cases of people who are said to be eaten. STAR's Alpha Team are then brought in to investigate the disappearance of their teammates. Alpha Team consists of Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Albert Wesker, Joseph Frost, Brad the helicopter dude, and the best character in any video game ever created, Barry Burton. You can actually choose at the start if you wish to play as Chris or Jill. Jill, however, completely smashes Chris. Chris can run a little bit faster and take slightly more damage, but Jill has 2 more inventory slots, which, trust me, makes a huge difference in a game where item management is a key factor of gameplay. She also gets a lockpick off the start of the game, which can't open every door, but can cost you heaps of time. And if you pick Chris, you don't get to have the story segments with Barry, so Jill is usually the better pick. Upon the sight of smoke, they land their chopper and investigate on foot. Now here's where shitty 1996 live-action cringy bullshit happens. Yeah, half the time this scene doesn't even make any sense.
No! Don't go!
Come on, there are mutant zombie dogs chasing you. Why are you standing still? Also, that line, Chris, was rubbish. And Jill, stop laughing! You know, people say, back then, this was good acting. Well, I've seen horror movies much older than this, and they seem to do much fucking better than this shit. Also, why is the uncut version so much better? Look at all this. Imagine if I saw this as a kid. I wouldn't have even passed the initial cutscene. Look, you can even see it's a hand ripped off someone's body. No wonder he was that shocked. I never understood that until I saw this version. Also, Wesker's hair is probably the best thing I've ever seen. They eventually stumble across a mansion and decide to go inside it to flee from the dogs. A shitty cast roll happens, they get inside, and shitty acting turns into shitty voice acting. And still, it barely makes any sense. You'll also notice that the characters are complete imbeciles.
What is it?
Barry, you're part of an elite task force, you're holding a fucking revolver here and you don't know what a gunshot sounds like? What's wrong with you? Jill and Barry then investigate a dining room and Barry is stupid again.
Jill, see if you can find any other clues. I'll be examining this.
Oh, you're gonna examine the blood, are ya? How? You gonna look at it? Okay, Barry. You investigate yourself for a bit when then you see the most iconic scene in Resident Evil history. This scene is pretty much perfect. The build-up is great, the slow zoom in the back of its head is just great, and yeah, it's not scary anymore, but this was the most terrifying thing back in the day. Barry then kills the zombie, and you two go back into the main hall to inform Wesker, who disappeared Nice. So, of course, you and Barry split up. The aim at this point is to find a back door to the mansion, find your missing teammates, and find out what the hell happened to this place.
Jill, here's a lockpick. It might be handy if you, the Master of Unlocking, take it with you.
The Master of Unlocking? What? How do you become the Master of Unlocking? Okay, everyone, you can now refer to Jill as the Master of Unlocking, whatever the fuck that means. Now it's at this point right here, where the game stops fucking around. It's done with the shitty cutscenes, it's done with the stupid character, no, there's more of that. It's done with the terrible voice acting, no, there's more of that as well. Fine. This is where the game becomes good. The atmosphere kicks in, the monsters become aggressive, and you're introduced to various types of monsters. Ammo conservation and item management also kicks in. This is where Resident Evil starts. This is where survival horror is truly shown, and everything becomes evil. Resident Evil. Fuck, that was terrible. Here is where the game becomes the classic survival horror game that it is. Now we'll talk about the gameplay itself. The movement consists of a tank style of controls, meaning that no matter where the character is facing, pressing up on the directional pad means that you'll move forward, down means you'll move backward, left and right turns you around. People say this controller style is clunky and a flaw to the games that use it, but I'm personally fine with it. It just takes a matter of getting used to. It also makes sense because of the fixed and constantly shifting camera angles. These camera angles are put to good use because it hides threats around corners, keeping you on your toes. One moment you may think you're safe and then the camera angle changes and
Holy fucking fairy bread!
The camera definitely doesn't take a Silent Hill approach where the camera shifts in different ways, giving more of a cinematic approach, but I don't feel like it needed it for this game. Every corner could hold a threat, and that constant thought can actually increase stress levels while playing. What I like about this game and many games from this era is that it doesn't hold your hand. No waypoint, no bullshit. If you weren't paying attention to the previous cutscene, you really wouldn't know what you're supposed to do. There's also no checkpoints or autosave. How the saving system works is that it's accessed by typewriters, which are usually found in the safe rooms throughout the game. And you can't just go up to it and save your progress. No. You have to find ink ribbons throughout your exploration, which are very limited, to use them at the typewriters to save your progress. Which then means you can't save very freely. This does actually add an element of horror to the game. You could have made heaps of progress and an hour of gameplay could be holding on by a thread if you haven't saved in that long. If you die, too fucking bad, sweetheart. You're gonna have to go all the way back to where you last saved. This makes the fear of dying very present in Resident Evil, or should I say, makes the fear of dying very resident in Resident Evil. Like, what the fuck is wrong with me? This is just not funny. The monsters themselves aren't very scary today, but fearing death is still there. Encountering the enemies can be stressful due to the sudden panic that happens. You don't want to shoot it because you might need that ammo later. You don't want to run past it because the walkways are very cramped and you might take some damage. This is still something that makes Resident Evil scary today, and the game may be a bit stupid, yes, but there is no doubting the fact that the game makes you fear death. Item boxes are also placed in these safe rooms that I mentioned before, and these item boxes are universal, which means you won't have to go on a wild goose chase to find specific items you placed in specific item boxes. So any item box will have the exact same items you placed in it. If I could compare this mechanic to anything, it would be like taking a shit in one toilet in your house and going to another toilet and the exact same turd would be there. It doesn't make any sense, but it is very fair, and I couldn't imagine how annoying the game would be without it. In terms of weapons in the game, there is a combat knife, however it is very unwise to use it as the enemies don't really get stunned by it. I only used it at the start of the game to finish off the zombies who went dead on the floor just to conserve some ammo, but otherwise this combat knife doesn't really have much use. The pistol is a standard weapon to use, which is long range and is good against zombies and dogs you come across. The shotgun is great, but it comes at a price. You can shoot an enemy from a distance until it dies, or you can conserve a lot of ammo by waiting for the zombie to come really close to get a kill in one hit.
And kill them in one hit. The game is too easy.
It is really risky, but it does pay off well. There's also a bazooka which can take different types of rounds such as explosive or acid rounds, and it's only mainly used for clearing out rooms or taking out bosses. And finally, a revolver, which fucking destroys, but revolver ammo is quite limited and should be conserved as much as possible. Healing items consist of first aid sprays which will heal all wounds, and 3 different types of herbs which heals various types of wounds, and can be combined with each other to make different types of healing items to do different things. How you find this out is by looking at a botany book in the mansion library, which doesn't tell you what combining the herbs do, but encourages you to figure that out for yourself. There are also various puzzles that are required to get items to progress. These items are usually keys, but sometimes there are certain key items that do different things. Items can also be inspected on the inventory screen to reveal more about the item or a new item in general. The puzzles, while a great change of pace from the actual game, are nothing special. They're very simple and it doesn't take long to figure it out at all. I mean, the puzzles are definitely not up to Silent Hill status. Most of these puzzles usually consist of pushing objects on certain places to activate a switch. My favorite one though definitely has to be the paintings puzzle, where you have to push buttons on the paintings in order of a person's life. You figure this out when reading the first painting out of many that says from cradle to grave. If you press the buttons in the wrong order, crows will attack you, and if you do it right, you will be rewarded with a key item. Yes, it's simple, but like I said, a very nice change of pace from the actual game. Something that I like specifically about horror games, and honestly all games in general, is if the game has a good atmosphere. Like I said, this doesn't have to be horror, but if the game can immerse me into it with combining the music and the visuals whilst creating a mood, it makes me like the game more. And I'll tell you something, Resident Evil's atmosphere is spectacular. The atmosphere in this game is so grim, so evil, makes you feel so uncomfortable. With all the lighting and the ugly wallpaper on the walls of the mansion, gives a feeling of unease while you play it. And it's really hard to describe this to you, but believe me, when you play this game, you realize that the atmosphere definitely lives up to its name. And my god, that door transition animation is fucking brilliant. Just a black void with a singular image of a door opening while the music changes is honestly perfect in trying to immerse the player into the game. The door transitions don't even get annoying at all, and the weird thing is, most of the doors are different, meaning that each door and each room has its own identity. And that's one thing I haven't mentioned yet, the rooms. All of them are distinctively different from each other. All have their own personalities, some have different music, and some don't even have any music at all. And none of the rooms are forgettable because of this. The game does this to push you and let you learn the mansion and the surrounding areas yourself and remember each distinct room on the way. The music is also great, so immersive and so grim. Even the safe room thing is still unnerving. It gives you the feeling that you're safe, yes, but it also gives you the feeling that you're trapped. Once you exit the room, you're in danger again. Sometimes I like to sit in the safe room for a while just waiting for nothing. And I know I'm bumbling, the atmosphere is something that really makes me like a game, and games like this do a fantastic job in immersing me into the game. No matter what room, no matter if it plays music or not, the game has magnificent atmosphere. It truly makes you feel like you're intruding on a stranger's home and you're not welcome. It uses different pitches and different tracks depending on the size and the color of each room to make this one of the best and most immersive atmospheres in any horror game ever. Well, not the best atmosphere in any horror game ever, but that's for another time. The game also uses pre-rendered backdrops instead of making everything 3D. This gives the game a really unique and distinct look, while placing 3D objects on these backgrounds gives you hints on pickups and secret areas in the room, such as bookshelves that can be pushed to reveal a hidden doorway. Enough bumbling about the atmosphere, back to the story. While exploring for a bit, you eventually find a shotgun, which when picked up sets off a trap in the other room. The doors are locked and here comes Barry to the rescue. Wait, I thought Jill was the master of unlocking. And here, ladies and gentlemen, the worst and best line in video game history. A line that is blatantly and truly just shit, that it makes itself so good.
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
I mean, I don't even know how to react to this. If I was told to voice Barry, I wouldn't have said it any better. That was amazing. After that, you meet Barry again.
Just a moment. I found something.
What is it?
It's a weapon. It's really powerful, especially against living things.
Okay, Barry, I was just gonna use it against the fucking brick wall. Thanks for reminding me to use it against living things.
Whoa. This hall is dangerous.
Then you meet Richard in the upper floors of the mansion, where he's been attacked by a vicious snake, or as he calls it, terrible demon.
Oh, Jill, this house is dangerous. There are terrible demons. Ouch!
Then tells you to get some serum from one of the safe rooms. This part truly relies on your knowledge of the mansion, but he dies anyway. and you eventually fight this snake, and then he slithers away, the fucking pussy. Through many twists and turns, you eventually get to the back door of the mansion, which leads you to the mansion grounds, which leads you to the mansion guardhouse, where Act 2 of the game begins. And this part isn't as long as the mansion, but there are still some really freaky parts here. As you progress through the game, you eventually find out about a group called Umbrella, who has caused an outbreak of the T virus, which seems to be creating these monsters you see before you. The guardhouse is probably my least favorite part of the game, but still has a really cool puzzle in it with a chemical called the V-Jolt, which involves you combining different chemicals that correspond to the writing on the walls. The guardhouse also has a basement with a shark tank, and those sharks are fucking terrifying. And that plant thing, whatever it was. You bump into Wesker again, who seems to be acting very suspicious.
Where on earth have you been? You disappeared from the hall all of a sudden.
I'm sorry, but I have my reasons.
You eventually find more key items to open more doors in the mansion, which starts up Act 3, which is the mansion again, but with a twist. You are now introduced to an enemy called Hunters, which are also introduced in an awesome way. Once you go back into the mansion, you'll see an FMV cutscene of something running quickly and eventually opening the same door you just walked through, and it looks kinda terrible, but still a great introduction to these enemies. The Hunters are fucking ravenous and take a lot of shots whilst attacking very aggressively. All the rooms that had zombies in it before are now filled with Hunters, which really plays with your expectations. You fight that snake again, successfully killing it this time. You find more rooms in the mansion's basement, and if you're playing on the DualShock version of the game, instead of hearing this atmospheric piece, you'll hear this. Well, that's probably the best thing I've ever heard. Act 4 of the game begins very soon, where you explore a series of caves, which eventually leads you to the final stretch of the game, which is a lab. Common thing with Resident Evil. It's here where you discover what exactly happened and why the hell Wesker was acting so suspicious. He was also part of Umbrella, which was a pharmaceutical organization, and it had contained the most powerful biological weapon in the world, known as Tyrant. And Wesker was blackmailing Barry all this time by keeping his family hostage to try and bring down both STARS Alpha and Bravo team.
You did a fine job, Barry.
Just as I thought.
I think you should stay away from Barry, Jill. I hear that his wife and 2 daughters will be in danger if he doesn't do everything I tell him to.
He was the one that kidnapped Chris off the start of the game and imprisoned him in the laboratory and also shot Enrico. Barry smacks him, and Jill and Barry decide to look at the Tyrant and possibly kill it.
Can't control what it does.
Why are you both standing still? Fucking do something! The Tyrant dies after 3 revolver shots, and Wesker sets off a self-detonating system which will blow up the lab in the mansion connecting to it. You are then to give Brad, the helicopter dude, a signal that you're still alive. Jill heads to the helipad while Chris and Barry cover her, and sets a flare off when the Tyrant comes back one last time. When you fight the Tyrant again, Brad drops you a rocket launcher and intense PS1 shit happens. Once the Tyrant gets game ended, Jill, Chris and Barry escape while everything explodes. Depending on the actions you chose, the final cutscene will play out differently. Barry can die, Chris can get left behind, and there are multiple other versions if you play as Chris. I think this is the best ending, but I haven't seen any other better outcomes. And yeah, the story doesn't make much sense at times, but we do have to appreciate what this game did for the horror genre. We have to remember what made this game so great, and it's pretty obvious. The mansion. The mansion clearly had the most effort put into it because whoever grew up with this game remembers the mansion in great detail and remembers all the stuff hiding within it. The mansion was scary, and while most horror games back then did take place in scary mansions, Resident Evil was the one to absolutely perfect it. Like I said before, certain rooms held some iconic moments, such as the hallway at the very start of the game. Getting attacked by the dog jumping through the window at the very start of the game while not even knowing what the controls do, which is followed up by another dog jumping through the window at the other part of the hallway, is just great. If you grew up playing Resident Evil, scenes like this will be engraved in your mind. Unfortunately, the game has aged terribly, but that's probably why the remake was made, which I'll tell you right now is not even in the same league as the original. The remake is too good, but I am getting ahead of myself. Resident Evil No matter how stupid it is or how awful the game can be, this game is still good. It can stress you out at times and make you panic. Definitely not the best horror game ever made, not even close, but it still makes the good list and gets a 6.5 out of 10. As always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and comment any suggestions for future episodes, and I'll talk to you soon. See you later.